Welcome back to the deep dive. I'm genuinely excited about our exploration today. We're diving into something that seems, really straightforward on the surface, but it actually uncovers some pretty profound things about what living systems really need. It's a story from a home gardener, believe it or not, but the lessons, well, they ripple out way further than just aquatic plants. Okay, let's unpack this. So our source for today is super recent, a blog post that just dropped yesterday, September 16th, 2025. It's from a series called Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 134. And this specific one, it's titled, Why Your Common Salvinia Needs Sunlight. Now, Common Salvinia, maybe you know it as floating fern. It's a pretty popular little aquatic plant, small, velvety green leaves, floats in these dense mats. People love it for tanks and ponds. But this post, it isn't just a quick tip. It's this detailed personal story that honestly really shines a light on these critical, sometimes very specific needs for things to thrive.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, I think, is how these kinds of direct observations, from hobbyists just doing their thing, they often manage to distill really complex ecological ideas into something clear, something you can actually use. It's different from a big study, right? This person, Ang, zoomed right in on a specific problem. It lets us see exactly what environmental factor was causing the issue. It's like a real-world case study and surprisingly powerful.
Absolutely. So our mission today, what we're trying to get at here is pulling out the key insights from Ang's story. We want to help you understand not just that Salvinia needs sunlight, but why this particular case is such a strong example of that sunlight imperative. And maybe how that applies to spotting those non-negotiable needs in whatever you're trying to grow. Maybe it is a garden, or maybe it's a skill, or a project at work. It's really about seeing the difference between conditions being just okay versus truly optimal. Okay, so the story kicks off with Ang, dedicated gardener, right? Doing the usual stuff, transplanting seedlings, clearing things out, a very hands-on kind of task. Ang had this pretty smart setup, these outdoor ponds, basically just big containers for holding aquatic plants temporarily. And while working, Ang notices something specific, a batch of Common Salvinia sitting in a seedling tray that was placed on top of one of these ponds. And, well, it looked bad, really bad, not that vibrant green you expect, just struggling.
And not just like a little off color. Ang described it as brownish, wilted. Now, for an aquatic plant like Salvinia, which is usually this bright, almost jewel-toned green, those are huge red flags, huge. Healthy Salvinia, it's plump, right? The leaves are firm, kind of fuzzy sometimes. Browning. That means the chlorophyll, the green stuff it needs for energy, is breaking down. And wilting suggests it's losing water pressure inside its cells. Basically, it's collapsing. It's running out of energy fast. The plant is pretty much screaming for help.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting, because Ang quickly zeroed in on the likely cause. This specific batch, the struggling one, it hadn't been exposed to direct sunlight for a couple of weeks. Right. Just 2 weeks. That's it. For a plant known for growing super fast, right on the water surface, that timeline is, really significant. It shows how quickly things can go downhill for a plant like that if it doesn't get what it absolutely needs. It made me wonder right away, is Salvinia just extra sensitive? Or is 2 weeks, surprisingly fast for any floating plant to decline that much?
That's a really good question. And it kind of highlights why Salvinia is such a great indicator plant. Yes, 2 weeks can be incredibly quick for that kind of visible, severe decline in Salvinia. Under good conditions, sunlight and nutrients, it grows incredibly fast. It can double its size in just a few days. But that fast growth, that high metabolism, it means it constantly needs a lot of energy. So you cut off its main power source, direct sunlight, and the problems show up really, really quickly, faster than maybe a slower growing plant. So no, not unusual at all for Salvinia.
Right, so Ang put 2 and 2 together. The immediate conclusion, just from seeing this dramatic difference, was crystal clear. Ang wrote that the lack of sunlight has a significant impact on the growth and even the survival of this aquatic plant. Sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But it's so fundamental. For Salvinia, direct sun isn't just nice to have, it's essential for photosynthesis. That's how it makes its food, its energy. Without enough direct light hitting those surface leaves, it just can't generate enough fuel to keep going, let alone grow. It's like, leaving your solar-powered calculator in a dark drawer. It just won't work. That brownish, wilted look, that's the physical sign of its energy system failing.
Precisely. The chlorophyll, the green pigment, its whole job is catching that light energy. Not enough light. The plant starts ditching the chlorophyll. That's the browning. It's either trying to save resources or it just physically can't maintain those energy-hungry parts anymore. It's a sign of major metabolic stress. And like you said, for a floating plant, this is especially critical. It lives right at the surface, expecting that direct hit of sunlight. It's not like some underwater plants that might adapt to dimmer filtered light. Salvinia is built to soak up the sun. It needs to bask.
Yeah, just to hammer this point home, Eng's observation wasn't only about the sad Salvinia in the tray. They also noticed that some of the common Salvinia in these ponds hasn't propagated quickly, while other plants have been growing prolifically.
Yeah.
That contrast, that's incredibly telling, isn't it? You've got Salvinia in one spot looking miserable, barely hanging on, definitely not spreading. But elsewhere in the same setup, other aquatic plants, and you'd assume other Salvinia getting enough light, were just taking off, exploding, making those thick green mats you want to see. I've definitely seen that in my own little water setups, where some plants just seem to stall, while others go wild. And I've often just thought, oh, well, maybe that one plant wasn't strong or bad luck or something vague. But reading this, it really forces you to think differently, to look for a specific reason, a concrete difference in the environment. It wasn't just wilting. It was a total failure to thrive, to multiply.
Right, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, that difference in growth, that's the absolute clincher for Eng's diagnosis. When you see the same plant or plants with really similar needs doing great in one spot and terribly just nearby, it points incredibly strongly to one key environmental factor being different, and Eng nailed it: sunlight. It's almost like a little science experiment right there in the garden, showing how one specific thing, light, in this case can be the make or break factor. It's often the bottleneck, that one missing piece in any system, not just plants. And it also shows why Salvinia is such a good bioindicator. Because it grows so fast and reacts so visibly to light levels, it gives you an early warning. If your Salvinia looks bad or isn't spreading, check your light immediately. Now, okay, it's worth saying, other things could cause stress, like really bad water quality or zero nutrients. But in Eng's case, the fact that the struggling plants were specifically the ones under the tray in the shade, that makes the sunlight conclusion pretty much undeniable.
Okay, so Eng figured out the problem, sunlight, and the solution. It was wonderfully simple, effective too. Eng just moved the seedling tray to expose all the outdoor ponds to as much sunlight as possible. That's it. No fancy treatments, no chemicals, nothing complicated. Just move the tray, let the sun in. It's such a great example of direct observation leading to a direct practical fix based on understanding a fundamental need. Did Eng mention how quickly things improved after that? Did the plants perk right back up?
The post doesn't give an exact day count for the recovery, but knowing Salvinia, how fast it grows, you'd expect to see new, healthy green shoots appearing pretty quickly, probably within, a few days to maybe a week. Now, the old brown leaves, they wouldn't magically turn green again. That damage is done. But the plant itself would start putting out vigorous new growth from its runners. That quick turnaround would just further prove Eng's point about light being the main issue. And this specific story, it really connects to, well, much broader ideas about caring for plants, or honestly, managing any living system. It really reinforces that you have to understand the specific, non-negotiable needs of whatever you're dealing with, like direct sun for this plant. It's not enough just to provide sort of general good conditions. You have to know the unique demands of that specific thing. That's a common mistake, right? Assuming good enough is actually good enough when maybe one critical thing is missing. Ignoring that specific need, it pretty much guarantees you won't get the best results, or maybe even failure.
So what's the bottom line here? What does this all mean for us? The main takeaway from Eng's experience seems crystal clear. For Common Salvinia, direct sunlight isn't just a nice to have. It's not a preference. It's an absolute imperative for growth, for spreading, for just plain survival. It's fundamental, non-negotiable. And this deep dive into just one person's observation, it really shows the power of paying close attention, doesn't it? And the importance of really getting those very specific environmental needs right. It's a reminder that even common things we think we know, have precise requirements. If you don't meet them, things can go south fast.
Yeah, and it's more than just plants, isn't it? This whole thing raises a pretty important question, I think, for all of us. How often do we, in our own work, our hobbies, maybe even relationships, assume that generally good conditions or putting in enough effort is sufficient, when actually maybe there's a really specific non-negotiable input missing, our own personal sunlight imperative that we're just overlooking? Are we seeing things stagnate or not performing well and maybe blaming it on general factors when the real answer might be one precise unmet need?
That's a really powerful thought to end on. Something to chew on, definitely. So as you go about your week, maybe you're attending a garden, or maybe you're trying to learn something new or leading a team, try applying that lens. Look to those specific needs. Look beyond just the general situation. What are those critical sunlight imperatives in your world? The things that could make the difference between just getting by and, well, truly thriving. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep observing, keep questioning, and keep that curious mind exploring.